again, I've had people come into the gym to train, or people that have reached out to me online with either questions about these things or coming in with those beliefs about themselves. Like, I have this problem. And then I'm like, no, it's not a problem. Like, go train. Like, do the things we know that are going to train your body to get better, and don't worry about your shoulder being slightly lower than the other. Like, it literally doesn't matter.
Daniel, welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I figured you would be a repeat guest because the first time you were on talking about speed and jumping higher, a lot of people loved it, and we can expand so much in this topic. But I do want to just talk about just your thoughts on the fascia world and just different ways of training the fascia to improve speed and kind of some misconceptions around it and how you get your athletes fast.
Yeah, so there's the first should be asking is really like, is fascia training even a real thing? So this is a topic where you see these different pieces of content and people talking about fascia and stuff, and I saw these things over the course of years, and I was like, what are they talking about? Where are they getting this from? And so at some point, I started looking into, okay, what does research actually say about this? Okay, and yeah, I think there's this huge gap between what we actually know about fascia and what all these people in the exercise field are saying about it. And yeah, so there's just kind of this wild west of like people just making stuff up. And if you actually look at what the research tells you, it's like, yeah, this is nowhere near what they were saying. So I've been kind of like trying to figure out how to present this, somewhat succinctly. And if I could just kind of get like a few minutes uninterrupted here, I think
No worries.
try to lay it out, in a reasonable fashion. So first of all, fascia is what's called the connective tissue, and it's very much a real tissue in our body. Okay, and people talk about fascia in sort of a general sense, but I want to talk about like sort of more specific, different types of fascia, or like different, sort of anatomical locations of fascia. All right. So first of all, our muscles themselves have a framework that the muscle is sort of built on, and that is technically a connective tissue framework, and it is actually classified as fascia. So you have every muscle fiber has an endomysium surrounding it, right? Is what the term is for that, sort of the structural framework of the outside of that fiber. Then the fascicles have either epimysium or perimysium. So a fascicle is a bundle of fibers, and so those are surrounded again by like a connective tissue sheath, and that is classified as fascia. And then the whole muscle, of course, has like a sheath around it, and that is classified as fascia. I think the whole muscle one is epimysium off the top of my head, and then perimysium is around the fascicle. But anyway, so we have fascia that is part of your muscles. All right, and that's legitimate, and obviously the structural framework of a muscle does matter, right? It's an important thing. Um, but when it comes to those connective tissue sheaths, like, training those just means training the muscles. There's not some distinction made between fascia and muscle there. The fascia is part of the muscle. Okay, and so there's no like special training, or there's no like training implications of that fascia. Okay, it's just part of our anatomy. You could kind of liken that to like bones, right? Bones are important, obviously, and we could sit here and talk about the anatomy of bones and the function of bones, but we don't have a bone training program, right? It's just like it's part of our anatomy, and so it's trained by the things we do. Okay, it's not. There's no bone training philosophy, and this different things we have to do for our bones or something. Okay. So that's one kind of area of fascia, is like just it's part of the muscle. Then we have intermuscular fascia, which is fascia that sort of connects muscles to other muscles, or we could even say uh, connects muscles to other nearby structures, which maybe has a different term than intermuscular. But so this is where things get a little more interesting, where you have muscles are not just existing completely in isolation, where you have an attachment point on one end, an attachment point on the other end, and then everything in the middle is just independent. There's actually some soft tissue connection of the muscle belly to other nearby structures. All right. Now, the research on this, a big body of it is actually on rat legs. Okay.
That's
Where
that's just as bad as like the menstrual cycle studies done on male rats. So
right,
that's another, yeah.
I wasn't familiar with those ones, but yeah.
Oh, it's bad.
So so we have this this body of research where they're uh, putting a rat under anesthesia, kind of opening up the leg. They're taking tendons on two sides of a muscle and severing them and attaching them to a force transducer to measure the force going through the two tendons. And there's a bunch of different variations of this, but basically the key finding is that if you stretch out one end of the muscle and then you activate it, you get different amounts of tension in the two ends of the muscle, which tells you that all the tension on the stretched out end is not all transmitted to the other tendon, because some of it is transmitted to those other connections to nearby structures. Okay, so that basically just establishes some anatomy that yes, there is some of this connection to nearby structures, and it's enough of a connection that there's some force can be transmitted through it. Now, of course, that's magnified when you just lengthen out that one muscle independently from the others. So it's about the position of that muscle relative to the nearby structures. So that makes sense. Like, as if you're pulling out one muscle apart from the rest of the structures there, then yeah, things are starting to stretch out more, and so you get tension on those connections to those nearby structures. Of course, in a in vivo, as they say, if you have the nearby muscles are lengthening with it, then it's much less of an effect, right? Because you're not independently just stretching out one muscle when you're, let's just say going into knee flexion or ankle flexion or something. The nearby muscles are generally going to be lengthening with it. And so then that kind of reduces the amount of force going through those, the intermuscular fascia. Okay. But so again, we can see in the rats, and then in humans, you have just things like, okay, if we independently or not independently, if we change the knee joint angle to stretch out the gastroc, that also shows on MRI some aspects of the soleus lengthening, even though the soleus doesn't cross the knee joint. And so that tells you that, yeah, well, there's some level of connection between the gastroc and the soleus. So when we stretch out the soleus, it has an impact on the gastroc. Okay. So yes, our muscles probably in general have some level of connectedness that makes them not fully independent. And so that's useful information. It helps us understand our anatomy. I would say that it perhaps helps us understand how sometimes certain exercises might make you sore in like a very particular part of a muscle. It's because you're not necessarily evenly stretching out a muscle or evenly stressing a muscle throughout the entire thing when you perform a certain movement, right? There might be more stretch, more stress, more force going through one area of it versus another. Okay, so it maybe helps us understand our anatomy a little bit more, and helps us make sense of some of those experiences of, yeah, like, why do we get sore in that one particular spot, or why do we have to do, if you take like a biarticulate muscle like the hamstrings, like why do we have to do different exercises for the distal hamstring and the proximal hamstring? Because if it was just an independent uh, cable or like rope, right? If you pull on the two ends, you're pulling on the both ends equally. There's no disconnect between the tension and the ends of just a one rope. But if parts of that rope or parts of that muscle are more connected to nearby structures, then you get those differing stresses. And so, okay, this is useful information about our anatomy. It helps us understand how our myofascial system is built. Okay, but again, what are the implications on training? I mean, like we already talked about, we sort of already know this, but yeah, okay, so we do more than one exercise for the hamstrings. We didn't necessarily learn that from fascia, but maybe some of the research on fascia helps us understand why. Okay, so that's a little something. Does this mean barbells are bad for some reason? No. Does this mean all movements need to be rotational? No, it's got nothing to do with that. Does this mean that only plyometrics are good and strength training is bad for athleticism? No, it's got just these wild, wild narratives about fascia and like fascia training and all this stuff, and it has nothing to do with any of the research evidence. People take a little bit of insight from the research, or I mean, most of them probably aren't even doing any research. They take a little bit of insight from research and then just jump to these ridiculous conclusions about what this means for our training. And yeah, as far as I can tell, that's like almost every fascia narrative you find out there, whether it's this guru or that guru or this salesman or that salesman. It's like none of it has anything to do with the actual scientific evidence. It's just people are taking advantage of kind of this mystery that we have around fascia. It's one of these sort of like exploitable areas of science where, yeah, we don't necessarily understand it all that well, and there's this uncertainty about it, and then it's like it is a real tissue, and so we have actual studies on it, so you can sort of like vaguely say this is what the science says, but that's not what the science says, right? I still haven't found anybody who's giving like true, honest, realistic takes on fascia. It's all marketing nonsense. Now, the last piece of it that I would want to talk about would be the fascial slings. All right, so this is when you have a connection between muscles, but then it's like a connection between a series of muscles. All right, so for example, we have well, I don't know the names that well, but one of the back lines, okay, as they call it, it's a chain of fascia along the backside of your body, and it's basically from your plantar fascia in your foot, and then all the way up into your back. All right, and so there's a part of that you can identify and you can sort of feel yourself, and that would be the fascial connection between the calf and the hamstring. And you probably, a lot of people have this common experience, like, okay, if you stretch your calf while standing up straight, and then you keep your calf stretched and you do a hinge to stretch out your hamstring, it will intensify the stretch in your calf, and you'll actually feel it like right behind your knee. Right. And so that's not because the calf crosses your hip. It's because the hinge lengthens your hamstring more. And by lengthening the hamstring more, you're pulling on that fascial connection to the calf. And so then that changes the stretch. So you can literally demonstrate this to yourself, right? Okay, so that fascial connection exists. What implication does it have on our training? I think you're hard pressed to find one. If
I was
anything,
gonna
oh,
say.
okay. If I want to stretch right behind my knee, I just lengthen out my hamstring and my calf together. Okay, cool. This is not like fascial training versus muscular training. This is not, this is not saying that we need to do this instead of strength training. Or there's just nothing like that. Then the slings. Okay, so they've done dissection, and yeah, do the slings exist? Well, the fascial connections between muscles exist. Yes. Does this show us that this chain of muscles somehow like functions uniquely together because they have this chain of fascial connections? Again, I haven't seen anything to say that. It's all basically just it's the dissection. We see that the connection exists, and then people jump to making conclusions about it. It's very hard to test how exactly these fascial connections have any impact on the muscles. And so right now it's very, again, it's just there's a level of uncertainty about it, but then people just jump on and just make crazy claims about how important these slings are. There's not a single training study about, well, that I've found, and I've looked, and I've asked people even for them, and I've said, hey, if anybody knows of a study that shows us this, not a single training study on, okay, we did this exercise that was specifically designed to work this entire fascial chain, and it had this impact. It had this adaptation. It improved performance in this way. Nothing like that. We have dissections of cadavers where they can see that there's these fascial connections, and then from there, people just run wild with what they think the implications of that are. And so that's kind of the current state. And so, but you'll get things like, I mean, I posted a thing making fun of, as I call them, fasciaists. Um,
Oh, that's great.
yeah. Posted a
So what
thing.
are they telling people to do? Like what
Well,
exercises?
there's a variety of different narratives. So on one end, you have like toe curls,
I saw your reel on that.
which
I
one of
died laughing.
which so
Oh my god.
nothing against toe curls, right? Um, Probably not the most impactful exercise, generally speaking. Maybe if you have some sort of foot issue, they could be helpful. Um, but so let's just say toe curls give somebody some benefit. Does it have anything to do with fascia? I don't think we know that. Is there a study demonstrating that fascia, that toe curls like make your plantar fascia stronger, and then that improves performance? I haven't seen that. So yeah, nothing wrong with toe curls. They're probably not a very important exercise in general. But again, so it's what's the narrative that they say about it? Okay, so there's toe curls, then there's extensive plyos is a thing, and it's like, okay, extensive plyos are useful. Is that because of fascia?
Mm.
Is there anything specific about plyos and fascia that we can identify? There's claims. Fascia is viscoelastic, as they say, and which we don't really have to talk about what that means. But basically, viscoelastic, you would expect then that if you're loading it fast, that it's going to have a bigger impact. That like the tissue is going to be trained and it's going to have more force going through it if you load it fast versus if you slowly load it. Okay, so that kind of lines up with plyos. But you know what? Muscles are viscoelastic. Tendons are viscoelastic. Pretty much all our soft tissue is viscoelastic. So if we do plyos for 6 months and we see some positive changes in performance, did that have anything to do with adaptations in fascia? I don't think we know that. I do think we know it definitely had something to do with adaptations in muscles and tendons, right? So again, we have things we can verify and we have evidence for. Like we know of the impacts that plyometrics have on muscles and tendons and on performance. Again, right now, I don't know of any impact that it has on fascia. All right, I'm not aware of any evidence that demonstrates what that impact is. Now, we could presume that there's some adaptation in the fascia as well. It's not, we can't promise it, but we could assume it. But even then, what does that mean about our training? Well, we're doing plyos anyway, right? No, no one needed to know a thing about fascia in order for us to do plyos.
Right.
So
It's
again,
like people are chasing this shiny thing and completely abandoning all principles of training that we should be doing
right,
anyway.
right. Um, yeah. So some people have said like, yeah, fascia's along for the ride. Like we acknowledge it's there, and that it probably, like it's not there for no reason. It's doing something. Um, whether or not that has any like, or whether or not this causes us to change our training at this point, we don't have any reason to think that it does. So then the narratives continue. I mean, so there's things like okay, so fascia is trained by internal stability versus external stability. So things like if we're on one leg and we're maybe using some level of instability, that is going to force all our muscles to kind of like work together more versus being in a machine or something. That's a theory, right? Is it legitimate? I mean, again, I'm not sure how you would test it. I don't think anybody has tested that. Again, I haven't seen a single like fascial adaptation study. Okay, but so that translates into unilateral work in the weight room for one. Well, all right, we're doing that anyway. Again, nothing new. Whether whether or not it has a particular impact on fascia, no idea. But okay, we'll do unilateral work. But then it also translates into, oh, like we're doing the water bag stuff or the water tank stuff,
Yeah.
things like that, to create that instability, to create more activation of muscles working together. Okay, so it's a theory. Again, is it tested? Oh, so we did water tank training versus non-water tank training, and this caused such and such adaptation in the fascia or such and such increase in performance, and therefore we think this is a good thing to do, or therefore we think we should do this instead of that. No, there's no performance training study like that. We have no evidence like that. It's literally just people running wild with what they want to say about it.
Wow.
And then you have the realm of going back to the fascial slings, you have the realm of being focused on gait.
Oh.
Okay, so, right,
Sorry, my reactions are probably saying it all.
right. And so this is a big thing. It tends to come with the fascial beliefs, is like our fascial slings play some role in our gait. And because of that, we want to do exercises that utilize the fascial slings and are going to improve our gait because of that. And this is where you get into the realm of like the rotational exercises. Everything is like lower body and upper body connected. We're putting in sort of like, what's the term I'm looking for? Like analogous or sort of mirroring patterns into our exercises that sort of mimic the coordination of walking or running, right? So just little things like, when one arm is moving forward, the opposite leg is moving forward. And so, an example of that would be like, okay, I have a cable and I'm doing a press and I'm going to step forward with my opposite leg when I do that. And because that coordination sort of mimics gait, then we think it's good for the fascial sling, and we think it's going to help people improve their gait. And this is just in that realm of like super fluffy stuff, you know? It's like, okay, you want to do a press with a cable? Sure. Doing it doing it with a light weight and taking the step with it to improve gait, does that actually do anything significant? Can you demonstrate that it does something significant? Is there a test? Is there some data? I don't think you can show that. Now, you may use these types of exercises and have people that have some sort of positive experience with them, right? Particularly if you take a sedentary person who has maybe a couple different areas of pain related to them being sedentary, and then you get them doing some exercises, they tend to start feeling better, right? And so it's pretty easy to create like a testimonial from this. Like, oh yeah, this person came in with hip and back pain, and then they did our gait focused fascial sling exercises, and now they feel better. All right, sick. You know, like exercise tends to have impact on people. They may have been able to do, or they probably could have done many things and felt better, right? They probably could have done yoga and felt better. They might have been able to go for a walk for 30 minutes per day and started feeling better. In fact, we have documented research on walking and back pain, right? And so just because you did something and it had some positive impact on somebody, again, that doesn't verify all the mechanisms that you're claiming about slings and fascia and the impact of certain exercises. You know, you can't just say, oh, this person feels better now, therefore everything I said about fascia is true. All right, so yeah, there's just this whole realm, I would say, of it's it's mostly sales and marketing versus, people who are actually trying to give us insight on the human body, right? It's mostly people are taking advantage of kind of this mystery surrounding fascia. They're coming up with some narrative about it that allows them to claim that they have some expertise or some special information that or some special tools or whatever that they can eventually sell. That's what I've seen in the realm of fascia. So yeah, it's not that it doesn't exist or it's irrelevant or we should just pretend it doesn't exist. Like, okay, yeah, let's try to learn about it, but the implications on training at this point are little to none, and it's certainly not some reason to abandon traditional training in exchange for water bag or water tanks and toe curls and well, yeah, special things that you dig into your fascia to release it, right? These are some of the things. Oh, and by the way, we haven't even gotten into the your emotions are stored in your fascia. Yes, your trauma is
Oh,
stored in your fascia as well. That's
no, that's
I,
that's a whole other rabbit hole that people should not even know about.
forget.
So, are the people talking about this mainly, is it like physical therapists? Is it speed coaches? Is it jump and sprint coaches? Like, who's even talking about this?
It's
Hey guys, just want to take a quick moment to shout out our sponsor, Simply Faster, and one of my favorite speed timing systems from them, the Freelap. I use it for my own sprint training as well as for my athletes, and they love it. It's super easy to set up, you can take it to the field on your own, and you can get accurate speed times to track your progress. Check the Freelap link in the caption below to start adding timing into your speed sessions. If you know me, you know I love my Freelap. If you're serious about speed, it's time to start timing.
it's like, I mean, it's people that are like in the exercise and health realm, but
Okay.
I don't know about any of them. I don't know if they have any credentials. I have not seen a licensed physical therapist talking about this.
Mhm.
Um, there's somebody who calls herself a doctor.
Mm.
I'm not sure not sure what the background on that doctorate is. But you know, 1.9 million Instagram followers, and probably making some serious bank off of it. But yeah, it is not, from what I've seen, like certified strength coaches, licensed physical therapists, anybody like that. It's more like just somebody who decided to make themselves an expert on something, and that and present themselves that way.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it's important for all of the athletes and parents that if it sounds too complicated and fancy, it probably is. And just really helping them sift through that noise because I think sometimes athletes get so much information online that again they try to think this shiny thing's gonna help them out or be that magic pill and then they just abandon, okay, I shouldn't do heavy strength training, my plyometrics, my sprint work. Let's do this thing because that's going to move the needle apparently, but there's no evidence behind it like you said. And
yeah, it's the toe curls.
yeah, and that so this kind of reminds me of when corrective exercises became really popular and everyone became like a corrective certified corrective exercise whatever and they just started doing a bunch of like stretching and mobility work the entire session with their athletes and it's like well you probably could have gotten more mobility benefit from something that's loaded and your athletes aren't going to feel like they're really working out or getting better. I just think this stuff can really make our athletes get bored and be like, I just want to get strong, fast, and powerful at this point. Like, I don't care about fascia and all this other foo-foo stuff.
Yeah, there's again, it's kind of that fluffy realm, right? Of Yeah, so we take a little bit of valid information, and then we just jump to, and therefore we need to do all this mobilization, or we need to, yeah, do this exercise that we think is gonna improve your posture, or whatever. And yeah, there's really the corrective exercise realm is like just a complete crapshoot. I can't say it's all garbage, but it's like, first of all, just the idea that, like, what is correct?
Yeah, or
You know,
what's good gait?
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, like when it comes to gait or posture or even the mechanics of movement in general, like there's always a pretty wide bandwidth of human movement, and it's very hard to make reliable claims about a certain type of movement, or a certain mechanic within a movement being wrong or being correct.
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
you think it makes athletes second guess themselves?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it can definitely turn into a problematic narrative where it's like, okay, some practitioner told me I have this issue, and now I need to work on it all the time, and now I'm thinking about it all the time, and now I come to a performance coach and I immediately tell them, oh, well, I have this problem.
Mhm.
And it's, and maybe it's like, oh, they overpronate overpronate, right? We don't have any definition of what overpronating is.
Mhm.
We don't have any way of defining what is optimal pronation. And we can find super fast, athletic, healthy people that pronate a lot or that don't pronate a lot. There's just not this whole narrative like this is correct and this is improper, is, like, for the most part, garbage, or at least, yeah, like the level that we can speak about it is just way, way lower than what sometimes people think or what sometimes people market, right? But if you can take, again, you take something that's legitimate. Like, okay, pronation is a real thing. This is pronation of the foot, like rolling inward of the foot for anybody who's listening. Um, that's a real thing, and we can observe it. It creates this opportunity for people to take that little bit of valid observation and then make a narrative about it of this is correct, this is incorrect. We need to fix the people that are doing it incorrectly. And that's where you've gone, way beyond what we can support with any type of evidence. And you're creating something that you can, eventually you can sell,
Yeah.
right? Based on this, because we are going to offer you solutions for this problem that we have invented in your mind.
Because you're broken and
Yeah.
your mechanics. Oh my gosh, there's actually a lady on Twitter. She's an athletic trainer for an MLB team. I'm not going to say who,
Yeah.
but she is constantly posting pictures of the pitchers and their backs with their shirts off and the shoulder alignment. Look, like one of his shoulders is elevated at 10 degrees, and then look at his foot. It's supinated at 30 degrees. So this is slowing his velo down. And I almost feel bad for these guys at this level. I'm like, these guys just want to like throw the ball as hard as they can, get strong and powerful. Like they don't
Yeah.
think about your like degrees and like it's so crazy. And it goes into the speed world too, I think.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously there's basics for good sprinting form, but I would say we don't know what's perfect.
No,
Um,
and there's no way to. So even if we have a mildly enlightened view where we're like, okay, well, different people are going to do things differently, and that like what is optimal is going to vary from person to person.
mhm.
Okay, that's the beginning of enlightenment there. But from there, you might start saying, okay, well, so this person should do it this way, and that person should do it that way. But truth is, we don't have any way to calculate what optimal is for a person. You really don't. You can sort of explore technique changes, but then in the end, it's like you got to let them sprint, and their instincts, in the end, are going to show you what is optimal for them, not your perfect technical model that you created in your head, or that determined from some analysis or something. Like in the end, you can't calculate what is optimal for a person.
Yeah.
The human body is too complex, and people are too diverse. It's an impossible math question. You can't calculate what perfect looks like for a person. And so in the end, it's like you're going to have to train and let their body adapt and get good at things because they're doing them repeatedly. And it's not going to be about you pushing them towards some perfect biomechanics.
Mhm.
Yeah, and just something that came to mind there where you were talking about all the content out there that people can see and how it can give them these ideas and it can be problematic. This is one of the reasons why I've decided that I'm willing to be critical of things on social media, because half the battle is sifting through information. If people, some people say, well, just put out your stuff and just stay positive, and I'm like, putting out my stuff is good, but sometimes you have to say, no, this thing is garbage, or this thing is incorrect, or they're making claims that they shouldn't be. That's part of the battle of trying to help people understand things. So yeah, it's one of the reasons I've said, like, yeah, I'm going to be a little negative sometimes. I'm going to make fun of some stuff. I'm going to criticize some ideas. That's just part of the learning process. You have to be able to criticize something if it's wrong. Like that's, there's got to be that. And yeah, and I've had people come into the gym to train, or people that have reached out to me online with either questions about these things or coming in with those beliefs about themselves. Like, I have this problem, and then I'm like, no, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
Like, go train. Like, do the things we know that are going to train your body to get better, and like, don't worry about your shoulder being slightly lower than the other. Like, it literally doesn't matter.
Yeah. So
uh,
can
yeah.
you leave everyone with what are the main needle movers in improved performance? So for speed, power, strength, what are some things you can give everyone to lead with today?
Yeah, so I would say categories of training. So linear sprinting is a good one, something you should do consistently and try to get better at over time. Uh, Plyometrics is another one. And when I'm talking about plyometrics, I'll say specifically it's about like bouncing off the ground. Okay. And so I would distinguish that from jumping as high or as far as you can. Okay, so plyometrics, and that's going to help you develop what we would call stiffness or elasticity, or you might hear the term like reactive strength, something like that. Basically, the ability of your legs to stiffen and then get off the ground fast, and that is relevant for many athletic movements, including speed, including jumping, things like that. All right, so sprinting, plyometrics. Then, yeah, what I would say jumping would be jumping as high or as far as you can. So versus like a quick bounce off the ground, it's like generating a large impulse, and that's going to be again obviously useful for jumping sports, but then also useful for non-jumping sports because it's going to just help you develop power in your legs. All right, and that's what one of the key things I want people to understand is that general training includes more than just general strength training. It's general explosive training. So, yeah, whether you're in a jumping sport or not, jumping is going to be helpful for you because it's going to train your body to be explosive and powerful. Then I like the change of direction category. This is one I'd say it's kind of like the most fringe one for me, but I think the I mean particularly for agility sports, um, the hard decelerating that happens within change of direction drills, I think is good. And to be clear, when we're talking about change of direction drills, we're talking about, like, for the most part, things that are planned out for you so that you are, it's not agility where it has perception and reaction like in sports, but it's something that's planned out. And because it's planned out, that means you can do like a hard stop and start because you're not having to think about what's going to happen next. Because you know what you're going to do, you can just fly into that cut, stop hard, and burst out of there. Because the drill is simple, you're able to get a higher output in it in terms of how hard you're stopping and starting. And that's why I like it versus just saying go play your sport or versus just like let's create some type of agility game. Like those are good, but if we simplify and we have a drill planned out for you, now you can stop harder than you normally would. And I think that's an output that is useful, like that hard deceleration that is involved with cutting. So that's a category. And then the last one would be your strength training, increasing strength relative to body weight. And and again, there, I mean, your basic movements are going to do the job for you. You know, you're squatting, you're hinging, you're lunging, you're pushing, and you're pulling with the upper body. Um, Not to say that those are the only things you should do. Like, you know, maybe you're going to do some spinal movements to train the different muscles of your core. Maybe you know you're going to do some hamstring stuff to build up resilience in those muscles. So that's where you would talk about kind of like structural strength versus like big movement neurological strength. Okay, so yeah, like a heavy, let's say just a heavy squat or a heavy lunge. You know, you're training this full body push with a high effort level, and that's good. But then also, yeah, well, I also want to just like build up the structure of my hamstrings, right? Or I want to build up the structure of my calves or my hip flexors. And so then maybe I'm going to do some leg extensions for the quads. I'm going to do some hamstring curls for the hamstrings, etc. So you're building up the structures rather than just like trying to create this big full body push. So we could even distinguish in strength, you know, between structural and neurological. And so those are really the categories. We could mention flexibility in there, where there is some level of mobility and flexibility that we want to have. And maybe it varies a little bit between sports, but I would just say generally speaking, it's like you should be able to do a decent squat, a decent side lunge, like you should have the mobility for that, a good hinge. And so then yeah, if you're starting out in a very immobile, very inflexible place, well then stretching can actually be a very simple and effective way to gain the flexibility that you want. But flexibility is not something that you necessarily need to like keep pursuing higher levels of over time. It's really like a box that you want to check off. The place I run into it the most is with like the adolescent males who have grown a bunch in their bones, but not their muscles haven't caught up yet, and so then they're super super tight. And so then that type of person, it's like, yeah, if you had a daily stretching routine, it would actually be good for you. But the vast majority of athletes, in fact, I don't know if I can think of a single female athlete that I've ever said, "Hey, you're not flexible enough. You need to start stretching all the time." Yeah, it's it's possible that it exists, but I can't think of an example off the top of my head. And so yeah, like I'll mention flexibility as it's like a box we want to check off, but it's not going to be like you said a needle mover where we need to keep doing this as far as possible over time because it's going to help us get more athletic. I don't think that's really a valid thing. So yeah, I think that was what, like 7 categories, 6.5, I guess.
And train those pretty much year round.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, generally speaking, trying to do those things consistently, get better at them over time. I think at high levels, um, there might be some periodization aspect of we're going to focus more on strength now, we're going to focus more on speed later, or we're going to train a lot of volume. Let's say we're talking about a track athlete, like we're going to train a lot of volume of sprinting and running now, and then we're going to train lesser volume later so that we can be more fresh. There might be, yeah, I mean, okay, we're gonna back off of plyometrics now because we're in season and we already have like lots of stress on the body, and so there's not room for a ton of this plyometric stress. There's things like that where you're sort of manipulating like how much of things you're doing. But yeah, generally speaking, big picture, it's like, yeah, let's just try to keep getting better at these things over time. And yeah, certainly the young athletes, for the most part, don't need to be thinking about different phases of this and different phases of that. I mean, you might have in season and off season, but that's pretty much just going to look like training more versus training less.
Yeah.
It's typically not going to be like, oh yeah, let's spend 3 months away from the weight room, and then let's like all then we'll spend 3 months off the track later. It's like, yeah, you
Yeah.
probably don't need to be doing that.
Yeah. Well, that sounds easy enough, and I think it really simplifies things, and people don't need to be thinking about fascia and the slings while they're doing all this stuff. So thank you for really
No,
breaking that down. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, you might be training fascia a little bit, and the slings could play some role in your movement, but you know what? It's gonna happen while you're sprinting,
That's what I was just
or
gonna ask.
or
Like,
while you're jumping, or while you're
yeah,
throwing a ball. Like,
yeah,
so yeah, it's again, people might be talking about, oh, we need this full body movements, we need this connection between the lower and upper body, and therefore we need to do this cable/kettlebell combo shuffle rotate deal. And it's like, or you could just run.
or do a bear crawl, or I don't
Yeah.
know, like
Or you could jump, or you could like pick
jump.
up
Yeah,
ground, and now I'm working my back line, right, my functional back,
right.
or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway.
Well, this has been awesome, and I definitely recommend everyone follows Daniel on social media. I'll leave his links in the caption below, and I love your content, Daniel. And after we last spoke, I started to implement some of your jumping competitions within our sessions instead of just doing like, okay, do a vertical or let's get on the jump mat. We will
Yeah.
do just jumping competitions to touch a tree branch or a pole, and I get way more out of them and they're more motivated and excited to do jump training. So that's been really huge and something I've definitely learned from you.
Yeah, making it fun is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, testing is great too, but making it fun is kind of the probably the more of the foundation versus the testing.
Yeah. Even for the older kids, college pros, they need fun too, not just our
Yeah,
young ones. Well,
absolutely.
thank you so much, Daniel, and I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next time.